don't see Christy jumping on, so I will take over. I don't have the introduction papers that she has, but I know Cheryl Midkiff very well. Cheryl works for Energy Systems Group, and she is going to talk to us today about modernizing and improving school facilities on a tight budget. So Cheryl, sorry for that short introduction, but I know that you'll have plenty to share with us today.
Thank you, Dr. Perrigan. Yes, I'm happy to be with you all today. One thing that was in my bio is that I am a beach lover and an avid golfer. So I want to take this opportunity, now that we're all back out live and kicking, to extend an open invitation for anyone that is willing and wanting to play golf. I am more than happy to come see you and treat you to a round of golf. So just let me know. With that, I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. Are you able to see that?
Yes, sure, we have you. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. All right. First of all, thank you for allowing me to participate today. The coalition is doing great work. I want to commend you on the work that you've done and the work that you're continuing to work on. And also congratulate Dr. Perrigan on his appointment to the commission. That's a great thing, and I know you're going to do a lot of great work there. So I'm not going to take a lot of time today, but of course there will be time for questions at the end. And there's a lot of important information that I want to be able to share with you guys today. So we're going to be talking about implementing infrastructure improvements with budget constraints. There's performance contracting and federal funding will be one topic that we touch on, spend most of our time on, and then indoor air quality improvements, which is very important. We'll look at some case studies and then kind of go over a summary for you. Of course, any questions we'll take at the end. So just to first qualify who we are, ESG was founded about 25 years ago. Centerpoint Energy is our home company. Sorry. We have over 25 years of experience in performance contracting with 400 employees across 36 states. I joined ESG about a year and a half ago, basically to ramp up our footprint in Virginia. So I'll be working with all Virginia schools and counties and that sort of thing throughout the state. As part of that 400 employees, we have engineers, project managers, financial experts, sales, measurement and verification specialists. All of that is included in those 400 employees. We developed over $3.2 billion in projects, and about $1 billion of that is in multi-phase projects, which means that there are clients that we have that come back to us for additional work after we do our initial work with them. And then we are vendor and equipment neutral, which means that we don't have our own products. We basically work with contractors or vendors that you prefer to work with or local to you as well. So why are we here today? Basically to talk about how to implement infrastructure improvements with budget constraints. That's what we want to really focus on. The current landscape, you all know what that is. We have a very serious situation here in Virginia as well as across the nation. We have schools that are crumbling, schools that are in dire need of repairs and renovations and that sort of things. The older buildings, more than half the school buildings in the state are over 50 years old. So that is indeed a problem that we're all faced with and how to deal with that. Deferred maintenance backlog, there's a huge amount of that. People have had to put off things that have needed to be done because they've had to concentrate on other areas. Just look at the last year. Your concentration has been completely on COVID and getting kids back into school. Maintenance is last on the list. So there's a deferred maintenance backlog that we're all dealing with, which leads to broken or failing systems. So that's something that is a result of those deferred maintenance. You have limited staff. Many of the small rural schools have 1 or 2 maintenance guys. Some only have 1. So there's a lot of limited staff, limited resources. There's increasing cost to have to deal with. And then, of course, there's some that just cannot afford new schools. We'd all like to tear down and rebuild all new schools, but in some cases, that's just not an option. So what can you do? First of all, you can consider a traditional design bid build approach. This is where you go out and you hire your own engineers or hire architects, contractors, and equipment vendors. You know, all of that has to go through multiple procurements to get all that done, which obviously takes a lot of time. You can consider public-private partnerships for new builds, new construction. This can tend to be complex, so something to consider there. Then there's the regular financing model where you just loan the money, bonds, that sort of thing. And then finally, performance contracting. This utilizes operational and energy savings to fund the project. There's a single point of contact and responsibility, but you still have authority over the project. It's a turnkey operation, which lifts the burden off of your staff, off of your resources. Basically, the project is developed. The company comes in and does that project for you. Basically, you're there is to oversee the project in terms of what you want done and making sure that we are doing it. And then there's flexibility for development and delivery. It avoids low bid issues. So when you're doing those procurements for architects, engineers, equipment, that sort of thing, you know, you tend to have to go with the low bidder. Performance contracting can get you away from that, where you're going with the best vendors, not necessarily the low bidders in all those situations. And then there's a speed to solution. So we're able to bundle all the services, come up with one project that touches on many different things within the facilities, and there's one procurement that goes along with that. So there is light at the end of the tunnel through performance contracting. It's been around since 2001, but now it's more important than ever as a venue or an avenue to actually get things done that need to be done and have needed to be done. It concentrates on infrastructure improvements and enhancing the learning environment, which, let's face it, that's why we're all here, right? It's an innovative design, build, construction approach. There's installation of new energy efficient building systems like lighting, HVAC, water conservation, control systems, ventilation and air quality. These are just a few things that are folded into most projects. And then the energy, maintenance, and operational savings actually pay for the capital improvements in part or in whole. So you're actually taking those savings and reallocating them back to cover the actual improvements that are being done. It can also include renewable energy like solar, wind, geothermal, things of that nature. And then electric buses, that's a new thing that's come out and become a really hot topic, but electric buses and how to keep those buses charged, that can all be part of the project as well. And the best part is all of the energy savings are guaranteed. Now, by this, I mean that you work with the entity that you've hired to do the project, and you come up with an overall savings amount on an annual basis. And then those savings are measured on an annual basis. And if they're short, then the entity makes up those difference. They make you whole. And if the savings exceed the actual guaranteed amount, then you keep those savings. You get to pocket those savings and use those for other needs. So let's take a look at what it looks like. Before you have the actual improvements, you have energy costs and you have maintenance costs. So those are your biggest costs. Those energy costs are obviously your utility costs. After the improvements, your energy costs are reduced. The savings that they are reduced by actually help repay the improvements that are going on. And then you have lower maintenance costs, and you have customer savings, which again, those customer savings can be used for other things that may be on your plate. The great thing right now is in that savings to repay the improvements, you can include your ESSER funds. So ESSER funds can be used to help repay the cost of the improvements. So those federal funds, this is just a snapshot of what they look like. The American Rescue Plan Act is the most recent one that came out in March 2021. It's in addition to the first 2 rounds of ESSER funds that were issued. How can ESSER funds be used? They can be used for a wide range of purposes, but you'll notice here that improving and enhancing indoor air quality is one that is specifically listed. So that is something that is high on everyone's plate. It can also include your HVAC improvements, chillers, boilers, rooftops, security, buses, things of that nature. And then how is the ARP ESSER funding different from the previous? You can see here that 20% should be allocated to address learning loss through things like summer learning and after school programs, but the remaining funds can be used for anything that was identified as in ESSER 1 or ESSER 2. So this is a little bit easier to read in terms of what actually the numbers are. And you can see these are really big numbers. And this is what was issued on a federal level. So obviously it's pared down to Virginia and then pared down even further for each school division. So while the numbers may sound great, it doesn't mean that everyone got a huge amount. It's obviously allocations were varied by school divisions, and some got more than others. But you can couple the performance contracting with ESSER funds. This has created a very unique time and situation for all of us in terms of being able to combine these funds to get the job done. You can utilize those ESSER funds as applicable and finance the remainder of the project, basically using the ESSER funds as a down payment so that you have the ability to incorporate more improvements that way, more capital improvements. Obviously, Davis-Bacon wages would apply anytime there's ESSER funds or any type of federal funding that's linked to what's actually being worked on. But you also had the savings guarantees. So these would be for any of the energy or operational savings that you have. These are guaranteed by the entity that you're contracted with. So there's no risk. The risk is on the entity, not on you. And then it impacts the budget. So where the payback actually equals the savings, there's little or no impact to the budget that you have in place. But I have to say that time is of the essence. There's a timetable on using these funds. It was talked about in the first session in terms of by 2024. So your new construction, building new schools, it's being discouraged at this point. And I know everybody's working on how to fix that. But starting up a new school project right now, a new construction is somewhat limited because of the time constraints that are in place. So a faster approach to take advantage of the funding and meet all of your needs would be through performance contracting. And this is kind of what the process looks like. There's a preliminary assessment. The entity would come out and do a facility survey to determine the overall need, walking through your facilities with you to make sure that there's a good list of what needs are out there from your side, and then actually taking a look at things that they may find that you may have not thought of. Then there's a procurement. You solicit the proposals, and then you select an ESCO, an energy service company, from that proposal process. Then, of course, you get into the development, and this is where the entity would come in and do a very comprehensive, what we call investment grade audit or survey, again, of the facilities, but get really down in the weeds as far as what needs to be done, what can be afforded, determining the best solutions with you, sitting down and actually going through all of the recommendations and determining what's needed now, and what's the best way to get there. And then determining the funding mechanism, in terms of what would be done from the federal funding side as like a down payment, or what would actually need to be financed on an ongoing basis. And then finally, the delivery, which is the design and construction, actually getting in there, boots on the ground, getting the work done, the commissioning, making sure everything is working like it's supposed to, and training of the staff, your maintenance staff, to make sure that ongoing upkeep of the new equipment or that sort of thing is done. And then measurement and verification. And really this is like performance validation. You look at the energy savings compared to the baseline that you started with. They report on those savings guarantees that are set out there. And then there's verification of the operations and maintenance procedures for long-term success, making sure that the things are being done and everyone understands what needs to be done on an ongoing basis. But the overall goal of performance contracting and the process is to determine the infrastructure improvements to enhance the learning environment. These can include this whole list of things here, like lighting, HVAC, boilers, chillers, and these are just to name a few. I mean, the list can go on and on. And you'll see there, the last one is the ventilation and indoor air quality. This is a big one, and it's one, as you know, that's been related to COVID specifically, and it's been called out in the actual relief funding. So let's talk a little bit more about indoor air quality. Many of you have actually addressed this. I've talked to numerous school districts across the state, and they've done a lot of work in this area. And that's absolutely fantastic. It's something that needs to be done. It's a must. But if you haven't, you definitely need to consider doing something. So I want to talk a little bit about what some of those options might be. But basically, for the indoor air quality improvements, it concentrates on health and safety of your students and your staff. Fresh air and ventilation are key to that, making sure that that is actually occurring. And then it improves the learning environment. It increases alertness, decreases absenteeism, all those things that we're all trying to do in terms of getting students in and making sure that they are in the right environment and taking in the information that we're providing to them. And it's part of any facility improvement plan. Any company should look at that and really make recommendations on what needs to be done in terms of making sure that the indoor air quality is at a peak. And again, they're covered by ESSER funds. Any indoor air quality improvements are covered by the ESSER funds. So here's a few of the solutions in terms of indoor air quality and HVAC systems that you could look at. Increased ventilation, which is basically outside airflow, removes or dilutes the pollutants in the air. Air scrubbing and improved filtration. Here we're talking about the filters mainly, as well as air purifiers. Ultraviolet, UVC light. This actually attacks the surfaces and makes sure that it cleans and keeps those surfaces clean. It mainly concentrates on larger units. And then Needlepoint Bipolar ionization, which is sometimes hard to say. And this can be put into existing HVAC systems, but it helps with reducing floating particulates and deactivating pathogens within the air. A lot of this depends on the current systems that you have in place, the capacity of those systems and the conditions of those systems. Sometimes a combination of these works best. And then of course, the cost that's associated with each is something that you would have to look at as you consider these options. So I apologize for the technical part of these slides, but I'm just going to pare them down for you a little bit. So increase air outside air. So existing facilities often don't meet the ASHRAE guidelines. That is indeed an issue if they don't. Most do, but some don't. And there's ways of meeting that as simple as opening windows. But realistically, is that how we want to address it? Can you open windows year round? Think about it. How often do you open the windows in your own home? You concentrate basically on your heating and air system. So basically you're measuring the existing outside air ventilation rates and comparing them to standards and making sure that they meet the ASHRAE standards. And it may require some repairs or replacements, or potentially installing new equipment to make sure that those guidelines are being met. Improved filtration, again, here's where we talk about the filters, and I'm sure if you've had any conversations with anyone about indoor air quality, you've heard MERV 8, MERV 13 terminology. So these are the filters that are within your HVAC systems, and most are currently using the MERV 8s, which are great filters, but you really need, if you're going to stick with the MERV 8s, you really need one of the other solutions to partner with that to make sure that the particles are big enough to be captured by the MERV 8s. MERV 13s are able to capture much smaller particulates, which you can see there at the bottom, the difference in the listing of things that are able to be captured from a MERV 13 versus a MERV 8. So that's important in terms of looking at the type of filters that you have. Now, some systems can't handle a MERV 13, but that's something that you're coupling with some of the other solutions that might be out there. Air scrubbing, basically in a nutshell, these are supercharged air purifiers. These can be added to your HVAC systems, or they can be standalones that are working on their own in coordination with your HVAC systems. They basically dilute the particulates within the HVAC systems where they are located. One thing I'll note here, the initial cost is higher than improving just the filtration, but the maintenance over time is less because of regularly replacing the MERV 13 filters, which need to be replaced on a regular basis, usually about every 2 years. And the ultraviolet light, this is the UVC light. This is where we actually, there's actually units that are installed that have lights that work on the cooling systems. They keep the cooling systems clean. They kill things that would be growing on the coils and that sort of thing. They have the ability to inactivate the microorganisms in a function of the total exposure, but a lot of it is the function of the lamps and then the time that the lamps are actually on. And the lamps should be replaced every 2 years. I think I just said that the MERV 13 should be replaced every 2 years, but that's not necessarily true. They could be replaced much more frequently than that. And then these also can be utilized in the school bus HVAC systems as well. One thing to note here is that these are generally, because of the cost of these UV systems, generally reserved for the larger units, the larger HVAC units, rooftop units, things of that nature, because they are a little bit more expensive. And then finally, needlepoint bipolarization. This is where systems are inserted into the HVAC systems that currently exist. And they basically generate positive and negative ions that go into the ductwork, into the actual air. They can actually kill pathogens that are in the air. But the biggest thing is they clump them together. So they make larger particulates that are then easily filtered through the filters within the system. So it creates a more cleaner environment because you're capturing more of those particles within the air. And this could be allergies and viruses and odors and things of that nature that are just in the air that can now be captured with the filters more easily by using the bipolar ionization. So with that, let's look at some case studies. And first we'll concentrate on the performance contracting side of it. Some real life examples. Here is one that we did, performance contracting for Mercer County Schools in West Virginia. You can see the list there of the different technologies that were installed. This project was done in 2015. It was a $9.4 million project overall, covering 27 schools and 3 associated buildings along with that. So basically 30 buildings. It included the lighting upgrades, the water conservation measures, controls, upgrades, boilers, chillers, roof repairs. I mean, it's a long list there that was included. They'll be receiving over $7.9 million in guaranteed energy and operational savings. So a $9.4 million project with $7.9 million worth of savings. Anderson County Schools in Tennessee. This was a 2-phase project, meaning we contracted with them and they liked the work that we did, so they asked us to come back and do a second phase. The first phase was in 2013. It was a $9.7 million project covering 17 schools. It included lighting, water conservation, controls, windows, upgraded ceilings. It actually generates $11.7 million in savings. The phase 2 part of that was in 2018. It was an $11.3 million project. It included HVAC, building automation, bipolar ionization, maintenance management software systems, and things like that. And it actually generated $744,000 savings annually. So again, the first phase, $9.7 million project, generating $11.7 million in savings. The phase 2, $11.3 million project, generating $744,000 savings annually. So you can see the performance contracting does work. Case studies on indoor air quality improvements. Talk about a couple of these. Clarksville Community School in Indiana. This was K-12 project of 5 buildings. We installed the Needlepoint Bipolar ionization systems, and that's still underway, but planned on being completed in September. But this was one that was the indoor air quality combined with performance contracting. So it was a mesh of the two, not just indoor air quality. The second one here is our friends in Bristol, Virginia, Bristol, Virginia Public Schools. And this was an indoor air quality project only. This was completely funded by ESSER funds. And we did this the end of 2020. We installed the Needlepoint Bipolar ionization systems into the existing HVAC systems there. And as part of that, we did an extensive cleaning, deep cleaning and steam cleaning of the HVAC systems, the cooling coils and heating coils there. You want to start with a clean slate. So we did a thorough cleaning of that, did the Needlepoint Bipolar ionization, and actually completed a study for them on the recommendation for filters going forward in terms of what systems could continue to use the MERV 8s and then those that needed to be upgraded to the MERV 13s. I'm sure Dr. Perigin can attest to some of the positive things that we've seen come out of that, just a reduction in some of the odors within some of the schools and things of that nature. So just in summary here, I'll talk about overall advantages of performance contracting. It incorporates all of these things: energy facilities auditing, the project development, engineering and design, project management, commissioning, measurement and verification, training, maintenance, and then operations overview. All of these are part of the overall project. It's a turnkey project with a single source of responsibility, accountability, that you still manage and oversee. So it takes a lot of the burden off of you, a lot of the procurement process out of it in terms of doing each of these things independently. It's able to be bundled and coupled together to come up with a good solution, overall solution that really touches on many different facets of the work that needs to be done. And then finally, what performance contracting can do for you. Obviously, help provide the solutions you need for infrastructure improvements and modernizations of your facilities. The energy maintenance and operational savings help pay for the capital improvements in whole or in part, as we've talked about. And then those savings are guaranteed. So if there's a shortfall, you get paid. If it's an exceed the guarantees, then you get to keep that money and use it elsewhere. So the savings are a big part of that. And then utilizing the ESSER funds or any other type of funding as part of the financial structure. You can use those as down payments and incorporate those. Again, a unique time and a key time to actually get some of these things done. This allows for speed to the creative solutions. So again, one procurement, because it's a turnkey operation, we're able to get all those things bundled together and get them going sooner than later. Turnkey lifts the burden off your organization. And then again, a lot of entities are vendor neutral. ESG is one of those whereby you can utilize your preferred local vendors and contractors will work with you to get the people in there that you really want to work on these projects. And then, of course, helping enhance the learning environment, which again, while we're all here, we really want to concentrate on that with you and making sure that we get the job done. So where new schools may not be an option, or at least not an option right now, you still have an option for the much needed improvements that are out there. Things still need to be done. They still need to be addressed, and they can do that through performance contracting along with the use of the federal funding. So I can say on behalf of ESG, we're more than happy to talk with you further about any of those options and work with you to make sure that we are doing and working with you to make sure that we're getting the job done in terms of improving the learning facilities. Now with that, I thank you, and I'll be happy to take any kind of questions you might have.
Cheryl, before questions, see, I may need you to mute.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. There's some feedback. If somebody else is on the call that's not muted, please, there you go. I think the feedback is gone. I will say just a minute, Cheryl mentioned our project that we did with bipolar ionization. We did use our CARES Act funding to pay for that project and was able to do a really quick turnaround on it. We looked at all the available research and decided that bipolar ionization was the best product for us to use at the time. We did install bipolar ionization in all of our classrooms. I think most folks on the call are aware that Bristol made the decision very early on during COVID that we wanted to open school in person right from the very beginning. We started the school year with about 65% of our families in person. We ended the year with about 80% of our families in person. And I think one of the things that helped us be most successful was improving the air quality in our schools. We have schools that were built in 1916, 1938, 1948, 1968. Actually, our newest school was built in 1974. So you can imagine the air quality issues that we had. And we installed the bipolar ionization. And I don't know how we disaggregate this data to find out how much the bipolar ionization was responsible for it, but I know it played a part. We were in person for the entire year, between 65% and 80% of our families in person. We had 0 outbreaks of COVID-19 and only 2 examples of transmission in our schools. We had a great mitigation plan. There was a lot of factors that went into it, but I'm sure that bipolar ionization also played a part. Secondly, I would say one of the added benefits that we weren't expecting, our 1938 building, it always has had, or not always, for the last several years has had a very specific odor when you walk in. It just smells like an old building. That's the best way that I know to describe it. We weren't anticipating this, but truly you can walk into that building now and not notice the difference between that and any of our other buildings as far as the odor goes. So that was an added bonus that we weren't anticipating. And we've been very pleased with that project. It was very affordable. It was only a small portion of our CARES Act funding. And most rural school divisions are like Bristol. They received a very favorable share in CARES and ESSER money. And so if you're looking for an air quality project, I can recommend that. From Bristol standpoint, we've had very good success with it. So with that, I'll just throw it out there. If anybody has questions, you can throw them into the chat, and we will make sure that we pass those along to Cheryl. All right. Well, guys, if you have any questions for Cheryl, her email should be available on the Canvas page. You can also send questions to me, and I will forward those on to Cheryl. We appreciate Cheryl and ESG for sponsoring our summit, and we also look forward to our next session, which will begin at 11:15. So you have a little extended break so you can check your emails, take care of any business that you need to take care of. Looking forward to hearing fellow board member Dr. Pete Gretz talk about the importance of school facilities and environment on student learning. So with that, again, I'd encourage you to stay logged in. Just hit your mute and stop video button, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody back at 11:15. Thank you.